Well, Max, super excited to be here with you. I've told you how I was stalking you for a while because I was so excited about Nivoso, snow clearing robot, especially pragmatic here in Minnesota, where I know the pain of dealing with heavy snow and having to work with that. So wanted to get together today and just hear more about you and Nivoso and the whole story and kind of what's next for you. So starting out, on your website, I saw a picture of you. It looked like you were in your basement maybe, and you were pretty young.
Yep.
So tell me, was that kind of the origin of Nivoso?
It was the origin of Nivoso by accident.
Okay.
In sixth grade, my science fair project was a remote control snow clearing robot. So it wasn't very advanced. It was all RC controlled. But what ended up happening was it sparked an interest for robotics in me. And although I didn't pursue it after my sixth grade project, back in 2020, when I was 16, I decided to revamp the idea again. And over the last 3 years, that's really where Nivoso came out of. But technically in 2016 was when I really came up with Nivoso in the first place.
Yeah, very cool. And what is your vision for Nivoso?
Absolutely. Yeah, great question. I think Nivoso needs to be a household name. Anywhere that has a driveway and it snows, a Nivoso robot should be there. And not only that, but we've made it modular. So the robot's not only designed for snow, it can clear snow, but with a different attachment. It's designed for lawn mowing as well. And leaf blowing is something we're still working on, but the lawn mowing portion, the snow clearing portion is something that people can utilize not only in the winter, but all season long.
Wow.
And that's what really makes it something that can grow, because it doesn't only help you one time a year, it helps you all year long with a chore that not many people like.
Yeah, very cool. And the name Nivoso, what does that mean?
Yeah, so it was originally Snow Tech. It was way cooler in my opinion because it signified snow and people knew it. There were some issues where, because when we became modular, we couldn't have the word snow in like a lawn mowing device, right? That doesn't make much sense. So we ended up having to change names, and we stuck with Nivoso because it still means snow, just people don't know that. It just sounds like a new name.
Yeah.
But Nivoso means snowy in Latin. But you would never know that your Nivoso lawnmower is literally a snowy lawnmower. And that's that's kind of my little internal just like kind of meme that I have for myself when people talk about it as a Nivoso lawnmower. I'm sitting there like, that's kind of
yeah.
So that's where the name originated, and we changed names just this last spring, so it's pretty recent. It was Snow Tech for the longest time.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's actually my license plate on my car still. Snow Tech license plate. So I kept that.
Yeah, it's cool to be able to have the origins of the idea and the
Yep.
company, and then be able to look back at the different iterations you've been through.
Absolutely.
So you've advanced all the way to the finals of the Minnesota Cup, which is coming up here. What do you contribute that success to?
Well, I mean, we have a fantastic team. I have a very strong respect for my team members. They're very, very, very smart individuals who seem like I can just tell them this crazy idea and they're just like, yep, done. And they just start typing. And that's been really big for us. I think those team dynamics are probably one of the most important parts in an early stage startup. And then also, I know a lot of people know, but like I have a pretty deep faith, I think. And I'm trying to make it deeper every single day. I'm by no means perfect, but I think I was even telling people this yesterday, like even just life in general, but especially like entrepreneurship and trying to start a complex company, it's a very lonely road and it's very discouraging. You never really know when it's going to be over. You never really know for sure when you're finally going to get success. And I found a lot of comfort in my faith and my belief in God and my relationship with God, because it gets lonely and not everybody's always there for you. And that relationship is key in my opinion. I think that's been that actually is the biggest, I always say glory to God. And that's kind of my trademark term, I guess. I say it a lot.
Yeah.
And it's because I truly glory to God. Like, this is insane. Like, I'm 19 and I have a robot company. Like, that's surreal to me. That makes no sense.
Yeah, it's very cool. And it sounds a lot like God isn't just a part of your life or like something that's happening over here. He is, like you said, a relationship, and it's woven into your business and the way that you do your work, the way that you live your life.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Love that. And you actually might have just answered this question, but what would you say is your biggest pain point as a founder?
Yeah, I mean the loneliness is pretty terrible. And it's not like lonely, like I don't talk to people or
Yeah.
anything. It's just that it's very difficult for people to relate to you.
Mm,
Or, if you're working in a job that a lot of people have, you can have a conversation like, yeah, I don't like this either. But
mm,
here it's like I can't go to anybody and say, oh, the sensors on my robot, and how's your robot? Oh, there's no robot. So that loneliness for founders is pretty big. But for me, my biggest pain point, I think, was just early on I had to learn a lot, and
mm,
one of them was like being good at managing, and I'm still working on that every single day. I'm by no means a world great leader or anything like that, but it's one of those things that you think would just be natural. And I'm a great leader, I love talking, I think I can manage people, but it turns out there's actually a lot of little intricacies to it. And
mm,
one of my biggest pain points early on was just having to make this switch from I'm always getting the leadership towards me and
mm,
always getting just the instructions essentially,
mm,
to, oh, now it's my turn, and they're just waiting, they're listening to me, listening to what I'm going to say, and I don't know what to say.
mm,
So that was really difficult early on to try and learn.
mm.
And I think we're getting to a point where I'm slowly but surely getting a grasp at it, but
Yeah.
even to this day it's just something you have to get better at.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're doing something that a lot of people never do in their entire life, and you're getting the chance to do it as a student. And you're, I mean, I look at myself and I think, wow, if I could go back, I would have, taken a similar path to what you're doing. Being able to really feel like you're making an impact. You're at least trying to revolutionize an industry
Yeah,
and see what happens with it. And that's a huge step of faith, but I'm sure super fulfilling, and you're getting really sharpened in the process, which is very
absolutely.
cool.
Absolutely.
Nice. What would you say is your greatest longing as a founder?
I think most founders can agree that once you get into this whole business thing, it all you can think about is that last little, like, okay, when are we finally going to release?
Mm,
When are we gonna get to market finally?
mm,
And it's not because you necessarily want to make the money. Genuinely, I've always heard when I was younger that it's like, if you're going and just doing it for money, you're gonna fail. And when I was younger, I was like, no, money makes you happy, trust. And that's not true, I believe. And I know for sure now that if you are going and trying to do something just purely just to make money,
mm,
you'll probably burn out. And that's not because it's not satisfying, but it's because typically it's a very long time before you'll actually start making money.
mm.
And if you're just doing it for the money, you're not making money for the first 3 years, you'll probably give up because you didn't succeed.
Yeah.
So for me, my biggest longing wasn't to make some money or anything, but it's just to see my product actually helping people.
Mm,
There's a lot of business models we can take, and the ones we're trying to focus on right now, that some of them are public, some of them are private,
mhm,
it's to try and make the biggest impact to
mm,
actually help people. Because I always like to say, and I know this is kind of a side point, but I really like to say that entrepreneur and problem solver should be interchangeable words.
mm,
If you're there and you're making a company that is solving something, but in reality that problem is a little bit made up, or
mm,
it's not necessarily the biggest problem in the world, and there's already solutions out there and you're just there trying to make a quick buck,
mm,
I don't know if that's really the definition of entrepreneur. I think entrepreneurs should be solving real problems
mm.
and trying to make an impact on the world.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest longing, truly, every single day. A byproduct of that is to get the product out so I can actually
Mhm.
see it happen, but it's just
Yeah,
making that impact and seeing it change people's lives.
absolutely. Very cool. Yeah, and speaking of that, you had mentioned to me previously that you've had to pivot in the past with product market fit, and you also have experience with that at Atland Ventures,
Yeah.
where you're working as well. Do you have a story about pivoting? Because the
Yeah,
reason I
sure.
think of it is because of mentioning you're trying to solve a real problem.
Right. Absolutely.
And so of course sometimes that means you need to pivot away from your initial solution or initial idea.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's been many times I've had to pivot. I've learned a lot from Atland Ventures. I believe it's the only student-run, student-owned venture capital fund in the world.
Wow.
So every single one of these students gets carry in the fund. So we have a
Mm,
spreadsheet, and it shows what your percentage of equity in the fund is. And it all
mm,
depends on a lot of different things that you need to do.
mm,
But I'm almost 100% certain, at least we advertise ourselves as the only student-owned fund in the world, because it was actually raised by students. It has no affiliation to any university funding. And because of it being truly real, right? We're
mm,
investing real money. We raised it ourselves, or the people before us did. we have to truly dig into it as if it's a real job, because it is a real job. It's not a club, it's a real legal fund. And because of that, you have to learn at a completely different level. And one of the biggest things I've learned, and this kind of goes into the point I'm about to make, is you have to love your idea and be passionate about it, but you can't be stubborn and say, no, we're not going to make changes, we're not going to listen. I always say you need to be stubborn in the sense that you believe in yourself. Being stubborn in your own and confident in what you're capable of doing, that's really important, because that's what's going to get you through it. But you can't be stubborn in the sense of not taking people's advice.
Yeah.
And that's a big lesson that I think I've learned, and I think hopefully everybody will learn at some point if they haven't already, because that's what's going to help you exceed. So one thing I learned at Atland that I didn't originally think was perhaps our business model wasn't the greatest in the world. Or not even the business model, but how we even did our work. I always wanted to have like a shovel and plow on the front of it. I always wanted to have my own version of attachments. And the one thing I learned very quickly is I'm not actually an engineer by trade. That's not what I'm going to school for. And there was a lot of things that I just overlooked, but I didn't want to change them in the beginning because it's my baby, right? Why would I listen to somebody else? Like, I'm the parent. I know best for what, for my kid. And I know it's a weird way of putting it. Elon Musk always puts this stuff like that. It's true. And one thing I've had to pivot to answer your question was just how the robot actually clears snow. There was different methods of doing it. And those were big changes we had to make. Another thing I learned that I think everybody needs to learn, and IoT companies have this issue all the time, any kind of like technology company, is typically inside the company, unless there's a lot of experience there and people know what to sidestep, they get really stuck up on the features. You want to release and you want to have all kinds of crazy little, flutes and whistles. You want to have the coolest, just modes and whatever. And I wanted the same thing for the longest time. That's when I also had to learn the whole leadership thing as well, kind of at the same time. And what is true, when a lot of companies start, their first product doesn't actually do a whole lot. If you look at some of the biggest like robotics companies right now, iRobot, for example, with their Roomba was kind of notorious for having a relatively not so great product when they released it. Kind of vacuumed, it kind of didn't. It got stuck all the time, but they still released, and that gave them enough runway to actually make a product that they really wanted at the end. And that was my biggest pivot. I think it was learning that we can't release a robot that has a rocket booster on the back of it. It has to be small steps every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. One thing that you had mentioned to me previously is that you had conducted a design sprint and you hated it.
Yes.
What did you learn from that process?
Well, our design sprint was something that I was very impatient about. That was the first thing. And not very consistent about with my work. Not consistent in quality, but consistent in how much time I spent on it every single day. And the reason I'm saying that is because I would stay up for 20 hours straight and seriously not leave this office till 4 a.m. And I had this whole like life hack where I just kept drinking coffee. That's how I stayed up, and used ChatGPT to do that editing of my text, because obviously at 4 a.m. you can't write. And my first experience of that was really bad, because we weren't doing a design sprint on one specific feature or on one specific. No. I wanted to get it all done. So we did the whole robot, the software, the app, how mechanically it will work, what features to use, how we want it to look. I shouldn't say we. I did that because I was told not to. I told you, my co-founders are very smart. They're much smarter than I am. And they were like, Max, this is not a great idea. I was like, no, we can do it. Don't worry about it, guys. Like, I'll stay up. And they're like, okay, have fun. And I didn't have any fun. I learned very valuable lessons out of that. I think one of the biggest ones that maybe isn't exactly completely related to this, but I think just a life lesson, is consistency is key. Consistency is those little steps you make every single day rather than large steps 1 month apart. Because when you're consistent, not only will you just not burn out as fast, but also you get quality work over time, which adds up to a bigger result in the end. And it's tempting to make those big steps. I still to this day have to stop myself, because I'll be at, it'll be 12 o'clock and I'm not really tired, so I'll just stay up later, and and the next day I'm like, why did I do that? But yeah, my design sprint originally, or whatever we were doing, I don't know if it would really be considered a sprint at that point. Whatever that was, it was not a great experience, because typically it should be just something that, as we talked about, that should happen on a normal schedule over the
Yeah.
course of a week, not 20 hours a day for the course of 2 weeks.
Yeah. And it, and it sounds like if you did it over again, you would also refine it down to a very specific goal so that you could really focus on what exactly are we testing and trying to, what's our research objective, so to speak,
Absolutely.
testing with real customers.
Quality is key here. And if you need to focus on one little part to make it high quality, that's what needs to happen. We can't just do 5 different things at once, because we only have this, we will still have the same amount of time in the day. So we'll have to disperse how much effort we put into everything to still fit it into our schedule.
Yeah.
So it'd be very, very, you know, very much put around one specific point or feature.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And you had mentioned your co-founders a little bit in your team and how smart they are. Can you tell me a little bit more about your co-founders?
Absolutely. Well, I say they're smart, very smart, is because I only recently started really diving into the world of software. I was much more of a hardware person and a business guy, but I never dove into software, which is odd because my dad's a web developer. So it's kind of weird that wasn't my first instinct. But for me, software is fascinating because you're typing just letters into a screen, and then there's something, an object that's not even connected to the computer, acting in the way you wanted it to, and you never talk to it. It's just, to me, that's crazy, right? It's unbelievable how software works. And the reason why I always say they're so smart is because they've had so much experience in software. So one of them is a mechatronics engineer, the other one has experience in full stack developing, and those are and just software engineering in general.
Yeah.
Those are really difficult disciplines to tackle. And I sometimes just feel like I tell them I have this idea, and it just takes a small conversation, they're already coding. And in my head, I'm like, how did you even know? Like, a lot of times there's no like instruction manual on how to do this. I just have this idea, and you're like, yeah, great. And you just start coding. To me, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
As I started learning how to, code so that I can help just with the software development on the team and make things move along faster, I've learned that, yeah, I think everybody should have a high appreciation for software development in general. And obviously there's a lot of other things that are difficult too, but to me, I can't even wrap my head around it, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I've worked with software engineers for about 12 years, and I have incredible admiration for them. I tried to learn a little bit of really basic front end coding and was like, yep, I know enough to understand it and respect you guys a little. And that's all I need to learn right at this point. So cool. And then what was the equity conversation like with your co-founders?
That was probably my first time I had to really deal with like a leadership role, I think, because up until then, that's why nobody likes to talk about money either, because the equity and money are, actually, I think sometimes people take equity even more like down to the heart, because now you're really like, you're worth this much of the company, right? And that was my first time I had to have a conversation. Thankfully, like I said, our team here has known each other for a good amount of time. We've had a relationship, and we're all really close. I would like to think we vibe quite well. So it felt like a lot more like a friendly, just a friendship, like something you would just talk about with a friend.
Sure.
And in fact, I even remember one of my co-founders, he even said, like, Max, don't even think I'll get offended. Just throw a number out. Don't worry, I'm not going to get offended. Just throw out a number. And that was really just reassuring, I guess, to know that they're not really in it just for those capital gains. It's just because they truly believe in the product and they wanted to see it succeed as well. So it went really smoothly. We got contracts written up. I have a fantastic attorney who helps a lot of other Techstars companies. Techstars is a large business accelerator that's well known across the entire world. So this attorney has had a lot of experience. Yeah. And we got it done in just a couple of weeks. Cool. And there wasn't even a negotiation. We just talked and figured it out. And it was pretty simple. Yeah. So I think it went well. I'm sure there are horror stories. I'm sure it doesn't go well often, but I had the blessing of it being a relatively simple endeavor. Yeah, that's great. It sounds like that's just yet another kind of piece of evidence that you guys will continue to work well together. Absolutely. And figure that out. So that's good. What would you say has been the biggest challenge that Nivoso has had to overcome thus far? Yeah, manufacturing, definitely the biggest challenge, because you're trying to create this complex robot, and originally you're not dealing with a whole lot of funding or anything in general. It's all bootstrapped. We just recently got funding from Minnesota Cup when we won the division. Glory to God, because I was getting to a point where I just didn't know if I really wanted to spend any more of my money on it, because it drains your pockets, especially when it's a hardware company. And manufacturing was tough because there's so many moving parts, and we're really trying to work on this lean startup model where you're trying to spend the least amount possible to get the greatest returns. So we had to design a robot that was extremely efficient when it comes from like an assembly standpoint, but then also use as many off-the-shelf parts. So that instead of having to create 60 components that are all custom, we only have to create 2 or 3 that connect everything together, but everything else is off the shelf. And that helps us because now we don't have to have a full-on manufacturing facility with millions of dollars of equipment with huge presses doing it. But that all came from months and months and months of collaboration with manufacturers and assembly buildings in the area, with the team having, I don't know how many hours of meetings trying to figure it out, and many late nights to try and get it all together. And I think easily, I only have to think twice, easily the hardest challenge we've had to deal with so far.
Who has been a mentor to you, and how did they help you?
Well, right off the bat, when I was 16, I was in this I don't know what it would be called, kind of like an accelerator, maybe like a pre-accelerator.
Okay.
It's for like young kids, right? It's up until the age of 18. It's called Young Entrepreneurs Academy. Huge shout out to them. They were the first, anything I went through for business. And there was this mentor I had, his name is Marshall. And Marshall, it's funny. It's really funny, actually. The office here is on Marshall Street.
Oh yeah.
And Marshall was my first mentor. And that was really a big kind of turning point for us, because before then I really didn't know what I was doing.
Sure.
I mean, seriously, like you have to start somewhere, and that somewhere is nowhere. And Marshall has had experience building and exiting his own companies. He has a ton of connections, which is key. It's not, everybody knows it's not what you know, it's who you know. And Marshall decided to go above and beyond. It was supposed to be just a Zoom meeting. He's like, no, we need to go to lunch. We need to go talk in person. I was like, this is great. So I was telling everybody, like, I had my first business meeting, but we got there, and right away he said, I think we should pitch this to a large Fortune 500 that is in this kind of arena. And I said, there's no way this company would ever look at me. I'm 16, right? But we ended up having conversation with them because he reached out to them and just shot the shot, I guess, shot his shot. And I don't even remember what the letter said, but it was very convincing, apparently.
Wow.
And it was just a really cool experience to have. And like, glory to God, I had him, because he really went above and beyond. But ever since then, because of my work in venture capital and because of my work in the startup world now too, those two worlds really collide quite often. And it creates this amazing network. I think the one thing I've never had any issues with was just having an amazing a group of people around me that have experience on basically every front of what we're doing: manufacturing, IP, scaling large companies and exiting them. People in the same office that I work in just are always giving me advice just because they want to help. So I could name off literally dozens of individuals who have helped me, and they don't help me on a small scale. They truly like devote their time to help me and our company just succeed. And that's also a huge reason for why we're still here and trying to create something.
Yeah. Love it. That's great. You kind of started to talk about this. What's the best thing about being in the beta cohort?
The connections are key. I mean, you never know who you're going to meet, and you won't meet those people on the street for sure. And the only place you'll meet them is in a place like this, I believe, or if you're just in a situation where maybe they just happen to have been your friend or something. But the connections have been amazing. I have somebody in the beta cohort right now who is an ex-Google software engineer. And I told him, I'm like, I'm trying to learn code. His name's AR. AR is awesome. AR is this guy who's just like, he just knows how to code. Seriously, like the computer and his mind are like on the same level or something. It's crazy. He's been helping me. He's bringing me through a boot camp right now that he's teaching me how to code and how to do Python.
Nice.
And it's a lot easier when you have somebody like face-to-face teaching you, because you go on YouTube and the instructions are kind of there, but they're kind of not.
Yeah.
That's been really big, but just that reach that beta has, its investor network is huge. We're beginning to raise, and their network is really what helps us find those funds and find those angel investors and find those people even interested.
Yeah.
That reach and that connection to their network and just the connections you get out of it in general. I think that's what really shapes any accelerator, honestly, in general.
Yeah.
Beta's done a very good job at getting that network to be honestly almost, I never like to throw around the word perfect, but perfect for an entrepreneur trying to get going, because it gets you all the resources you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. And as a young founder, do you ever feel intimidated by investors, and how do you overcome that?
I used to be very intimidated, and I'd like to think, I think I've come to a point where when I go in there, I have a completely different mindset. But when I started, I think everybody, when they're talking to individuals who are very obviously higher up than them on some level, right? Whether that's just experience or just, you know, honestly, I'm really into business. So when I'm talking to somebody that's exited a multi-million-dollar company, all I could think is like, wow, like this guy's a celebrity, or this lady's a celebrity. Like I've never thought I would even have a chance to talk to these people. So that was really intimidating in the beginning, but I'm a pretty extroverted person. And when I would get intimidated and anxious, that'd drive me nuts. I was like, why are you anxious right now? Like, what is wrong with you, dude? And I would force myself to just keep going. And I would stutter a lot. I'll get all sweaty and just make a fool out of myself. But now it's to a point where you go to the gym so much and you keep hurting and your muscles keep breaking, but then you get bigger. It's the same thing with this. I just force myself to keep basically going through pain, essentially.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, I don't know if I definitely don't get like intimidated or anything. I have a respect for everybody around me. So it's not like I'm sitting there thinking anything negative. It's just, I don't, they're still human in my, in my opinion. Everybody's still on the same playing field in that sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really big connecting piece in general, to have true connection, especially with an investor, where you really are supposed to have a connection and a true relationship. You have to see each other and respect each other for what the other person does, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that point that you made of they're human, and that's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten in working with high profile leaders, is just think about what keeps them up at night. What are their hopes and dreams, and what are their worries and things like that. And it sounds like you've really taken that mindset into the conversations with investors and other people, that your fate is in their hands, so to speak, in some regards.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, too, I just learned that sales isn't about convincing, because when you're pitching, you're basically just selling them.
Yeah.
I don't believe that when you go into a business pitch, you should be really going in there with the intent of getting any money from them. You're just going in there to figure out what their interests are. You're going in there as the expert of your product to tell them about it, but you should never be going in there for the money. And he recently passed away, with my advisor, Mark Ward. He was a very, very profound founder from Chicago, and he made a fantastic product. But the thing about that product was it wasn't actually like out there yet. It was very much a prototype, and he had no prior experience, but he still raised the company at a $20 million valuation. Wow. With no experience. And he was a U-Haul manager before, and then he had an AI drone company, right? And he always told me, don't go in there thinking about the money, because you'll definitely not get it then, right? Go in there and just have a conversation with them. And I learned this in class, even over the summer in my business class. I had a biz comm, and they said, always keep a conversational tone. So if you go in with that mindset, you have no reason to really be intimidated. Yeah. At the end of the day, everything's in God's hands anyways. If you're going to get the investment, you're going to get it. There's nothing you can do. And if you're not going to get the investment, it was never meant to, you'll never get that investment anyway. Sure. So with all those things in mind, that's just kind of the recipe for not really going in there too worried. Yeah. That's great. I've got some rapid fire fun questions for us to wrap up. So just 1 or 2 word answers, and then we'll close out. Favorite movie? The Matrix. All right. Favorite food? Pho. Vietnamese. I love pho. It's awesome. I only learned about it very recently, but I love pho. Nice. Where do you typically go for pho? There's a place in Blaine, which is closer to my my home city. It's called Stone Pho. And I love it because they will literally give you like a gallon. Seriously, it's the size of your head. It's the bowl. It's like you get it and you're like, I'm not even exaggerating. And it's like $12. Wow. And it's got ribeye cut into it. Ooh. It fills you. Oh, it's so good. I mean, it's healthy for you in a way. I mean, the sodium is terrible, but everything else, I mean, beef broth, which is basically the whole thing, is
Yeah.
very low calorie but high protein, which is great when you're trying to build
Yeah.
muscle.
Nice. I love ribeye, so that sounds really
Oh
tasty.
yeah.
Nice. Best place you've traveled?
When I was like 12, I think something like, when I was younger, we went to Hawaii.
Mhm.
Oh, I loved Hawaii. And not even because of the like beach. I just really like how it's been kept this, place that has a lot of nature still. And the volcanoes are everything about that environment was really cool to me.
Yeah. Cool. Favorite product?
Recently, I don't know if it's my favorite product, but it's my favorite brand that makes some cool products. It's called Liquid Death.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it.
I love that brand. I've watched all the videos on the CEO. Liquid Death is, in my opinion, the coolest branding company on earth. They literally make water cans that say Liquid Death on them. And they're actually about to IPO in spring, or they're supposed to be IPOing. So you already know if the valuation is right. I'm definitely going to be getting on that train.
Cool. Favorite dad joke?
My dad makes a lot of them, and I don't really ever remember them. I don't know if I got that. This is my excuse for not knowing any, but I don't think I'm at that place yet. I don't know if I actually have a seat at the table yet to make a dad joke. So
it's kind of a trick question, because especially asking a younger person favorite dad joke, it's more like least favorite dad joke. Like, what's the one that your dad always tells you? You're like, come on.
My dad's a big prankster.
Okay.
And he's very good at it. So although they're not dad jokes, my dad gets me on a day-to-day basis all the time. And sometimes my dad's one of those people that loves those really weird, quirky products. He bought himself this watch that shocks you to wake you up. And the only way to turn it off is by starting to do jumping jacks. And I was home a week or two ago, and it was 5 a.m. I'll be honest, I didn't sleep that night. It was right before Minnesota Cup pitch, and my business pitch was just on repeat in my head. I just couldn't stop. So I didn't go to bed that night. And at 5 a.m, I was like, nah, I'm going to the gym. I'm done with this. My dad at 5 a.m, I see him. He's totally asleep still, walking around the hallway going with his hand, because he didn't actually want to do jumping jacks. I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, it's shocking me, Max. So although maybe no dad, I just forget them, but there's a lot of moments.
Yeah.
Kind of looking forward to that when I'm a dad. Just being kind of just fun like that.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Anything else that we didn't talk about with Nivoso that you want to make sure anybody listening knows?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely like everybody to go to nivoso.com. It's Nivoso.com. And right at the very top it says join our waitlist. It's completely free. We'll just have you added to our email list, and that's really what's helping us with our investors, because one big thing in the whole VC world is market signal. And before you have a product, one really good way of doing it is by getting a waitlist. So anybody that has even interest in the product, we'd love to get your name on there. It's a very small survey, and you're good to go. So that'd be very helpful for us as we go into the winter.
Great. Sounds good.
Awesome. Beautiful.
Well, thanks, Max.
Thank you, Casey.